Everybody, to another episode of MC Fireside Chats. My name is Brian Searl with Insider Perks. Super excited to be here with you for our first episode and our new intro, by the way, which is, I think, maybe, did you guys like that?
I did. Yes.
That was nice.
Very nice. Very, very nice.
Yeah, I like that. It's all pumped up, and now we have much higher expectations since we have a better intro. So I hope you guys can deliver, because I for sure cannot. But anyway, yeah, so we're super excited to be here. This is kind of like our fourth week. Like, we have people who were here last year. Eleonore and Shane. Phil is going to be a regular guest on the show too. And Angele was on our glamping episode last year. So and Greg was on. You were on the Campground Owners episode, right, Greg?
Yep, correct. Yep.
So we've kind of shuffled things around to give kind of a different perspective here. But I think our intention for the show is RV industry, but also a little bit of outdoor rec and some other things that we might talk about, and just kind of having good conversations, but generally around kind of that theme that is on my phone somewhere that I haven't memorized yet. But by week 22, I should have it fairly down, mediocre-wise, to where we have. But the idea is to have a topic, right? Every time we're coming together. And so I know RV industry was probably like the closest thing we had to a topic when we talked before. But I think we just want to talk a little bit more about outdoor rec and blend some of that stuff in and tie all that together. So we'll have some special guests from time to time. Normally we have two. They both backed out on us this week and left us all alone. So we're going to talk about whatever we want to talk about. We got two people in here from Eleonore and Shane. You want to introduce yourself? It's 2025. Introduce yourself from the RV industry.
Ladies first.
Okay, thank you. I'm Eleonore Hamm. I'm president of the Recreation Vehicle Dealers Association of Canada, RVDA for short. We represent RV dealers in Canada, and our goals and strategies revolve around advocacy, which is an interesting topic these days, and education and member services.
Awesome. Thank you for being here, Eleonore, as always. Shane?
Yep. My name's Shane Devenish. I'm with the Canadian Recreational Vehicle Association up here in Burlington, Ontario, and we work closely with Eleanor and her group on it seems like a lot of advocacy these days as well. So great to be part of it again.
Well, we'll talk about that maybe in a little bit, right? Some of the advocacy work that you guys have been doing, because in Canada, it's been kind of a mess with whatever Trudeau is doing, right? And so that might be an interesting, perhaps, conversation to have, because I know there's some pending legislation that relates to the industry, right? That may or may not be impacted. But anyway, we can talk about that. And then I want to hear about the shows and how things are going. If you've heard anything from the States counterparts, maybe a little bit about how your show is still a couple months away, right, Shane?
Yeah.
But any early hints on how that might be going. But Greg and Angele, do you want to introduce yourselves briefly?
Angele, feel free. Take it.
All right. So hi, everyone. My name is Angele Miller, and I'm one of the co-founders for Creekside R&R Glamping. We are a glamping outdoor resort in New Brunswick. And we also focus on a lot of outdoor activities, Nordic spa, a center for yoga meditation. And it's a pleasure for me to join all of you here today.
Awesome. Thanks for being here, Angele. And Greg?
Yeah, last and certainly least, Greg Emmert from Camp Strategy. We are a consulting group here in the States. I'm the only one on the show stateside, so that's interesting. Please do not blame me for what happens down here. I am but one person. I have very little control, and I will say this: love the new intro. It's a good thing the camera's off when that's on, because I'm popping and locking in the background, and I won't do that on the screen because some people may find it offensive or scary. But I am very happy to be here. Thanks for having me back on, Brian.
Yeah, it's good to see that you're alive from your flat tire incident yesterday.
Yeah, that was fun time.
Get hit on the side of the road or something. So yeah, glad to have you here. So I think we're going to have to find a cadence with each other here, right? And so my vision here was there are so many, you guys have heard me talk about this on multiple shows before, right? There are so many things between the RV industry and glamping and campground ownership and consulting that overlap with each other. They all impact everything that we all do. And Shane, you know that better than anybody, being the former executive director of CCRVA now, right? You know how closely related these things are, maybe more so in Canada, because everybody works together and is nice to each other up here. Not that doesn't happen in the United States, but perhaps not as the industries aren't as close. Would you agree with that, Eleonore? Just not that they're they disagree with each other, RVDA US and Arvik, for example, or Ojai, whatever their name is now. Sorry, it'll take me years to get used to that too. But they're like, you're more closely intertwined up here and interlocked, aren't you? Is that fair to say?
Well, I would say, I mean, because we sit on each other's respective boards or are guests at each other's boards, you know, I attend Shane's meetings, I attend CCRVAs, we all attend Go RVing. You know, the industry is obviously smaller than what it is in the United States. And the different, the kind of the four core associations do work very closely together. You know, I can't really comment on what's happening in the US. I mean, I know that RVDA and RVIA work closely together. I know they have conversations with Ojai, but you know, I don't know if they have the same. I really can't comment on whether they have.
Yeah. I'm not saying they have a bad relationship. I'm just saying it's like it's more close because of what you just said, right? It's just more. It's different up here, I guess. Is the not worse or better, just different. Yeah. So I mean, that's kind of my vision, right? And I want to see how this kind of plays out. But like, obviously, you know, glamping has a big role to play with outdoor rec and consumer behavior. And we know there's a lot of crossover between people who try glamping for the first time, or maybe, you know, have come from the RV side or want to go to the RV side. We know that there's lots of, you know, people that Greg deals with from a consulting standpoint. Again, campgrounds that have glamping, obviously they're RV sites. We know that. We don't need to explain that. But so I just think there's some good conversations that we can have as we flesh that out. That will require me to do perhaps some more study on what my actual vision was that ChatGPT came up with 7 months ago that I don't remember. But that's generally speaking what it is. So where do we want to start? Like, I think the RV industry is important. We talked about some of those things that we can talk about and cover. Is there anything, Greg or Angele, on your minds that you've seen come across your desk that's kind of important that you think we should talk about first in glamping or campgrounds?
You know, if I go on my side, just to share a little bit about what I'm kind of seeing now for trends and what people are looking for into glamping too, is because the industry is growing and it's booming, and it's really like, you know, a lot of people love spending a lot of time outdoor and are looking for those experiences more and more, like glamping has to offer. Is they're also looking for more consistency, and I'm finding that the expectations are a little bit more elevated than it was about, you know, let's say 4 years ago when we got started. You know, when we got started, people were just, glamping was a new kind of type of beginning industry for us anyway in our region, and people were just excited to get outdoor and experience, you know, being in your own glamping unit and kind of have the elevated camping experience where, you know, they come and it's kind of a resort type amenities, but they still can get to barbecue and lay in a hammock and do all of what you get to do when you go camping. But now what I'm finding is people's expectations on the level of experience is so much more than what it was 4 years ago. And now they're asking, they kind of have a list of requirements that they're asking when they call. So either it's like a hot tub or it's a sauna. Now it's the sauna. You know, we have so many calls where people are not just asking for a barbecue. They're asking for a sauna and, you know, private hot tubs. So I find that's really, you know, something important to talk about, because it is, you know, something that a lot of people like us glamping owners, we always continuously have to innovate, keep thinking about how to elevate that experience and, you know, kind of start keeping on meeting these demands from the consumers. And then one of the questions we ask ourselves too is when does that end, that cap of what you're going to be offering in a glamping type of experience, you know?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. And that's actually a really good place to start, because I think that lends itself well, what you just said, to a crossover between our two industries, right? We've seen, and I'm sure Greg would agree with me, we've seen a trend towards more luxury, picky, I want the best experience type stuff in the RV park space too. And my camera is still flickering. That's fun. But anyway, it'll make me look better the less frame rates I'm on camera. So we'll figure that out next week in the new studio. But like I think we've done some studies with this with Scott Barr too, who, if you don't know, does the North American Camping Report for KOA, also helps us produce our 2 monthly reports that we're going to put out, where I think we're going to resume them in February. We just took a month off for January for the holidays. But we've done a lot of data research into the fact that, you know, now people are looking for more like best campground near. They're looking for more experiential type things that actually are difference makers. And part of that is a relation to the economy, we think, in that, you know, you're maybe camping less nights or glamping less nights, you know, maybe taking, you know, 1 vacation or 2 vacations instead of 3 or 4. And so, you have the ability to be a little bit more picky with what you're choosing. And like, you want that 1 vacation, if that's the only one you're going to take all year, to be really special. So you take longer, and maybe the booking window changes, and you do more research, and you call and ask more questions about hot tubs and saunas and RV, you know, park amenities and things like that. Because you're like, you should have a right to have your dollars go to something really exceptional. And I think that's what we've been counseling our clients on too. And then I'll shut up because I've probably been talking for too long. People might tune out. So I think we've been counseling our clients on that too, that it's a different economy and a different market heading into 2025. I'm comfortable that our industry as a whole will be just fine, but also it's not going to be a Kevin Costner build it, they will come moment anymore, like it was for the glamping industry a couple years ago. And really the same thing with camping over the COVID years, 2021 and 2022. It's going to be a situation where you really have to prove your worth. You have to do your marketing. You have to show why you're different. It's not enough to have a swimming pool and a miniature golf course anymore. Why? Like, everybody has a swimming pool within, like, all the hotels do, all the campgrounds do. You've got to have something that sets you apart. It doesn't have to be $1 million water park, but it's got to be something. Would you agree, Greg?
Absolutely. Yeah, man. You know, you are preaching the same message that I try to get our clients on board with. It's about driving your marketing and driving the guest experience from your why. You know, why do you exist? And why is not to make money? Why is it you need a philosophical and aspirational approach to your business that then you communicate to those guests. That's the type of thing that creates a connection, a bond between your guest and your place, your guest and your staff, your guest and you, because you're selling your park, you're selling your experience, but especially as a hands-on owner operator, man, you're selling you. I felt like a celebrity in my park when I owned it. And there were plenty of days that I didn't want that. I wanted to just crawl under a rock and go dig a hole, fix a water leak or something. But you got to embrace that. You have to dive into that, because if you don't have that uniqueness, just exactly what you're discussing, Brian, if you don't have that, why are they coming? Every park I go to has if I went on, and I was a KOA, so I felt really like I really have to figure this out, because if people go on a road trip and they're KOA campers and they stay at, I don't know, 8 or 9 KOAs as they make a transit through the states, seeing different things, they see yellow shirts, they see cabins, they see the guest maps, they got a pool at every park, maybe they got a bounce pad at all the parks, maybe they got so what in the world am I going to do? After a while, it's like the perfume counter, right? You walk past and they keep spraying you. By the time you get to the end, you're like, I don't know what smells like what. It's all exactly the same. What in the world am I going to do?
Yeah.
So you got to figure out a way to differentiate. And as you know, mine, I always go back to conservation type activities, because they're inexpensive, and the natural world is something that really binds us. Even the people who are afraid of spiders or snakes or what, they will gravitate towards it if you give them a safe way, a way to feel safe and do it at the same time. So that's how I did it. Angele sounds like she's got some really great, I mean, I don't know of too many places that lean into Nordic spas, and I mean, that's fantastic, but that's how
every glamping place is in Canada.
Oh my gosh. I've got it. All right.
We know how to do it right in Canada.
Spring is coming. I'm going to migrate northward with the birds. I'm just going to come up and Nordic spa out for a while. That sounds wonderful. Yeah. I need to get on the other side of that border.
Yeah. But that's crossover, right? And then we move to the RV industry. I think it's the same way. And you can tell me if I'm wrong, Eleonore and Shane. But I think it's the same way when you talk about manufacturers of RVs. I think there's now more of I have a choice lots of things are back in stock now. I have the ability to go to the shows or go to the dealerships and see all the different models and all the different things that are available to me. I'm going to be more picky now. I'm going to demand something that maybe isn't necessarily better, but is better for me, if that makes sense. And so I'm going to ask questions about the features. I'm going to ask questions about, the mileage, if it's, model like that. I'm going to ask questions about the electronics and all that. And I'm going to be more picky. I'm going to maybe take time to make a decision. Is that fair, Eleanor, Shane, whoever wants to take that?
Well, I mean, I think obviously consumers are doing a lot more research than they were before. They have, like you said, they have more options, potentially available than they did during the pandemic, because dealers do have inventory on their lots. And it's the experience, as as Angele had said before. People are coming for experience, and they want to experience. They're not just necessarily camping; they're going to experience things, whether it be outdoors. So there's they're looking at their RVs not just in a camping mode. I'm not just going to take it to the campground to camp, right?
Yeah, and so you need to have features in that RV that fit your specific lifestyle, whatever that is. And everybody's different. So it doesn't mean one manufacturer is better than the other. It means one manufacturer is better than the other for that specific individual who happens to be purchasing that RV at that moment. And obviously there's lots of those individuals who are still purchasing, right? But that's what I think we're agreeing.
Yeah, and to add what Eleanor's saying, there's so many sources on the internet, whether it's Facebook groups or ownership groups or YouTube videos, and people are doing research, but not only about the RV lifestyle, but particular brands, how they get treated, and even to the point of dealerships. And there's a lot of pressure to make sure that you do things right, because even if you don't do something right, there could be somebody out there who sends a negative comment out, and it wasn't justified, but everybody else takes it. So you need to address, all those things.
Do you want to give us an example of a negative comment, or do you want to just?
It could be hypothetically, Brian.
It's like, okay.
These guys don't take it there. I took my unit in there, and they didn't fix my link. Things like that. Really basic stuff, but it could be a lot more in depth too. But I think getting to Angele, I'm un petit peu français, but is that how I pronounce your name?
Yes, Angele.
Angele, yes. Okay. So, on the
I've never heard Shane speak French before. I don't know if it was actually accurate. I actually don't even know if it was French. It just sounded French.
No, that was very highly French.
Okay.
But anyway, it's not it is important to have some features at any business, and especially glamping experiences. To what point and extension, do you need to go saunas if your people are demanding them, or hot tubs or whatever? But I think campgrounds, especially in glamping experience, it's give the customer good customer service, and it's basic stuff, and sometimes we don't see that. It's a thank you. It's treating them well at the introduction.
Why do you think that is, Shane? Like, why? I mean, we're not talking about the RV industry necessarily. Or obviously, there are people within the RV industry who don't do that well. But same with campgrounds, same with marketing agencies, same with glamping. Mm-hmm. Why do you think it's so hard for people, or is it not hard and they're just willingly saying, in some cases, that I don't want to care about that?
I think there's a lot of factors. There's a lot of pressure. There's less employees. I think more people feel that it's okay to complain more these days. So, it's hard for a business owner sometimes not to get down on themselves, but to disregard all those negative comments, and then the next customer that walks through the door to be positive. But I think it's more of a societal thing now, and maybe it's not exemplified to your workers or out there as much as it used to be. I remember man, my day with the finance companies, we used to go through customer service seminars at least twice or three times a year, and I'm just not sure if some of those things are being funneled out as much as before.
Lisa, would you hand me I'm sorry, I asked Lisa for my phone because there's a stat that I wanted to pull up related to this. So we were having a conversation, and here's what I mean. We were having a conversation, I think it was last week, maybe for anybody who was watching the show. Obviously, I wasn't paying attention. I think last week, Casey Cochran was on the show from CampSpot, either that or it was the week before. And we were talking about, we had someone on the show who was talking about the amount of cancellations that people had. And it was kind of like it was a campground owner. She was one of the special guests, and she was just talking about, and it's the perception, I think, is different as a campground owner or a business owner of the volume of perhaps negativity or cancellations or whatever we're talking about that exists out there because you're in your own bubble, right? And because psychologically wise, and Harvard did studies on this, right, especially for negative reviews, but when you hear something bad, your mood goes down and stays down much longer and then comes back up versus hearing something good and then you kind of go right back to your happy medium place, right? And so I'm wondering, like, I'm not saying you're wrong at all, Shane. Obviously, consumers are complaining, maybe not more today, but they're definitely more vocal and more visible and have more power because of social media and all the different media channels out there. But I'm trying to find this stat because Casey was kind enough to look it up for me afterwards, and apparently I just talked to him too much on Slack, so I'm trying to scroll up through here. But it was a number. Someone said cancellations were 20% and chargebacks were a huge issue. They are only at 11 to 12% for cancellations, which is still high. That's kind of still like surprises me a little bit. If you want to weigh in on that sec, Greg. But then chargebacks are less than 1% of those. So chargebacks are not as big of a, and again, I know you're not in the campground industry, and that's just to be clear, that's from CampSpot's data. That's not all of the industry, but they have a huge representation of thousands of parks that they could pull that information from.
Yeah, like 3,000 parks now, I think, right, at CampSpot?
Yeah, something like that.
So that's a pretty good chunk. And that, I think you're right, Brian. That's just human nature. They're 11 to 12%, but when you talk to people, they're like, it's 20%, it's 30%, it's 5 out of every 10 people.
Everybody does it. Yeah.
Complaining. Everybody's complaining. It's just part of who we are as creatures, and that can be hard to get around, especially, again, going back to those owner operators, when you're out there and you are in it every day, to kind of go back to what Shane was saying, maybe it's just because you're so mired down and tired and trying to wear every hat. And I know until I got my park organized, I never got my park organized. I felt like I was wearing all the hats right up until the end. I'm not gonna lie to anybody. When something like that came through, it feels very personal, and it sometimes is really hard to separate. But and seeing stats like that, I bet you could show that to owners all day long, and they go, no, it's much higher at my place. But they've never actually sat down with their reviews. They've never done the data. And it's hard because now you're operating on emotion, and really, in order to get your work done and run a successful business, you somehow got to remove emotion. But that's like telling somebody, be less human when you run your.
Yeah, I don't think the answer is less emotion, like for the reasons you just said. It's amazing how we find weird things to talk about on the show, right? Never know what's going to happen when we start talking. I don't think it's an emotion thing. I think there must be a way for you to triage, compartmentalize, departmentalize, whatever the word is, after you hear that feedback, whether it is by email or an online review or in person, which are even harder to deal with. But understanding, did that customer not even have a legitimate complaint, although that's part of it, but was their perception that their complaint was legitimate? Doesn't make them right or wrong. The customer is certainly not always right. But then if it was legitimate or legitimate through their perception, then how do I either fix it or fix the perception that it was a problem? And then the ones that aren't falling into that category, I like just toss them away. The guy was an asshole or whatever, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And you hit on something that I've talked to multiple clients about, and just people in my network that are park owners that aren't clients of Camp Strategy. And it's perspective, because perception, you can't change. If I see red and you see blue, our rods and cones just aren't lining up, man. You're never going to see red where I see it if you're always seeing blue. But perhaps the difference is in our perspectives. Maybe you're looking at it from over there at a different angle, and I'm really close to it. So we need to find a way to bring those perspectives closer together. And then you have a chance to understand one another's perceptions. From there, you can build on something. And so that's incumbent on an owner, operator, manager to try to do with that guest. And it's also incumbent on that owner operator to look at that realistically and go, you know what, maybe they said some hurtful things, but there's a kernel of truth in here. I need to find that, separate it out, erase the emotional part, and use that kernel of truth to improve my operation, to improve my facilities, whatever it was that started that. I can take that and use it, but I can't allow myself to hold on to the, if they write some awful things about you and your family, which I had done, I wouldn't even want to get into it. I still have a list. I've sold my park 4 years ago, and in the back of my mind, I can tell you the last name and site number of every client that when they went home on a Sunday, I wanted to get out the excavator and dig a giant hole and push all their belongings. They're all still in there. You're laughing because it's true. You feel that sometimes, but you put it away. You go on with your business, and you try really hard to see if you can get the perspectives closer together. I think that's the only way you do it, because perspective informs perception.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we look at, and then you look at, so how's that tie back, Shane, to the RV industry and what you were talking about, right? Because, I mean, let's have an honest conversation here for a second. Like, we both know that there are not as many problems with RVs as we're perhaps led to believe by the volume of people screaming and shouting on social media, or by the perception of just dealers, for one example, of the amount of people who come into their dealerships and complain. But also, there are problems with some RV manufacturers, some of whom who are better, some of whom who are worse, some of whom put into place customer service, some of whom don't. We're not here to call out people, right? But so how do we, or do we care enough, should we care enough to change that perception from a 20,000 foot view on the RV industry as a whole?
I don't know how what is it? Perception and perspective. What did you say, Greg?
Yeah. I really see the perspective. Your perspective informs your perception. Yeah. You can argue with somebody. It's listening to them out. I think it's just trying to come to an agreement of why they feel that way and what could be done.
But not even to the individual, right? And I'm sorry, I didn't interrupt you. Not even to the individual, because we're not going to solve, like, some people, as we just talked about in campgrounds, are just assholes. But they're not new, right? Like, it feels like they're new because of social media and blogs and all the places that they can be seen and heard. But there have always been assholes at probably the same percentage in the 1940s as there is today, right? Or whatever decade you want to pick. The question, I think, is I guess the question I am trying to ask you, which may be the wrong question, but is it something that the RV industry has on their radar to, and maybe it's not even the RV industry's job, but is there a way we can provide education around this to help? Like, obviously the consumers who are going to be vocal are not going to go away, but is there a way to, and it needs to be done in the campground industry too, and the glamping industry too, and I'm not picking on the RV industry, right? But you guys are here. Maybe you won't come back next month, but but does that make sense?
Well, it's managing consumer expectations, right? That's a lot of it is
Yep.
which we hope that our dealers do. when they have a new consumer that comes into their dealership. We do know also some of the RVDAs, the provincial associations as well, and I know it happens in the state as well, have consumer education sessions, whether it be the lifestyle seminars that the RVD of Alberta puts on. But education and training for consumer is huge, and whether it comes from at a rally with your manufacturer, at a campground, at a dealership, we just need to make sure as an industry collectively that we're managing those expectations. We're letting people know what's available. I mean, even for Angele, right? She might be like, no, these sites don't have saunas, because we're limited with I don't know, space or water, or what have you. But just to manage that so that when people at least are going towards their experience, they know what to expect, right?
I mean, I think that's a big part of it, like what you're talking about, right? And I think that, but I guess perhaps that's too arrogant, because I don't really know the RV industry like I know the campground industry. I feel like generally speaking, that's human psychology, but what you're saying resonates with me as a potential consumer of somebody who would buy an RV, right? Is there a better job we should be doing as an industry, as an outdoor hospitality industry, that you think, Eleonore?
Well, again, my expertise isn't really in the outdoor hospitality, so just.
Well, but I think you're part of outdoor hospitality.
Well, yeah, in terms of the RVs, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, we always think, we always recommend our dealers, stay, relevant, with product, with knowledge, with what's happening, with education and training, so that, they at least themselves can then educate the consumer properly. And I would hope, again, that campground operators and anybody in the outdoor space is doing the same, so that they can then, coach or assist their consumers to make their best decisions. I mean, I think that goes for any industry. I don't think it's.
Yeah. I mean, what do you think the biggest consumer mismatch or perception is with the RV that they're buying or have? Like, if you had to pick one. I know that's hard.
Well,
I won't hold you to it. I'm just asking, like, generally, what do you feel? Not that's a right perception, but perhaps it's just a lack of expectations being set correctly.
Well, I think sometimes the drivability, is people are, we hear sort of what are the obstacles when they decide to come out of the RV industry, and, not using it enough, not necessarily using it properly, not having the right. Again, it comes to consumer expectations and training. You may not have the right tow vehicle.
Yeah. Nobody's saying it's the dealer's fault necessarily, right? We're just trying to have a conversation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, RVs there's gonna be times when it breaks down or something doesn't work, and it happens, no big deal. But it's
well, it could be a big deal. I mean, what if it breaks down in the middle of Burning Man?
Well,
just got there and it's day one.
Let me take that
okay.
last part out. It is a big deal, but that just don't overly stress about the fact that maybe fridge doesn't work or whatever, your water heater.
But I agree with you. Like, it's not always a big deal. You could also break down in the middle of a tropical island with an open bar with 24/7 happy hour. Then it's maybe not as big of a deal. So I'm with you, Shane. Sorry, continue.
No, but and Eleanor's point, it's expectations and how you handle those things when they do break down. Okay, here's who you call, and you can expect X to Y time frame to to fix it or whatever. But things are. I think there's a lot of focus on the RV industry to to maybe build quality units, and I think we're starting to see that.
You think it's getting better? I mean, I don't know how bad it was, to be clear. That's maybe the wrong statement, right?
There was, I think I don't think it was. There was more instances during COVID, I think, but even then,
there was more
got
people,
overblown.
Right? So,
more people, there was more units built. Maybe it was less than that, 1.5% or whatever, but the numbers were a little bit bigger, and maybe the perception is there was more. But I think everybody's watching building quality product now.
All right, let's talk about shows. Have you guys heard how the shows have been going so far? We just finished the Tampa one, right? I don't know if either of you went down to Tampa, but
Yeah, we were not in Tampa. I mean, I heard that the dealers were, the numbers I think were a little bit down, but then the weather's been sort of unique in Florida this month. So that likely had an impact. I think from what I just read the trade media and the dealers there seemed pleased. We have our first shows in Canada are starting tomorrow. So the Calgary RV show starts tomorrow and the Halifax RV show as well. So we'll know a little bit more, next week in terms of, what the numbers look like, what type of product is being looked at, what the demographics of the consumers are.
Knowing how dangerous this question is, do you guys, both of you in the RV industry, really believe that we're going to have a year that is up over last year with RV sales?
If you had asked both of us probably in December, I think we would have probably said yes, but there's just seems to be some more uncertainty today than I've ever seen in a while.
I think I agree with that. Like, I don't think it's a product issue at all. I think it's economic.
Yeah, and the what is unknown factors.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, consumer confidence and the economy.
Do you think that? And you said December versus now, which is roughly a month, right? Is there something that caused you to change that perception? Is it just more time has passed? Is it the whatever dynamic Mr. Trump is having with Canada that might result in tariffs that might cause people to lose jobs? Is it?
Yes.
All of that.
Well, yeah. I mean, you understand. Like, we have obviously a U.S. audience here and a Canadian audience, and some people around the world too, I'm sure. So I'm just trying to provide, I guess, a little bit of clarity on, like, is this I think it's an RV industry. It had, like, campgrounds are the same way, right? Like, it's not just RVs. But I think it's a United States and America thing. Or United States and America, did I say that? Anyway, United States and America and Canada. There's 3 countries now. I just made them. So, but like, I think it's maybe exacerbated perhaps a little bit earlier than otherwise would have shown in Canada, and you can all disagree with me, because of the tariff situation and potentially the fallout from that, right?
Yeah, and also the exchange rate for the retailers. It's
$1, yeah.
When it's fairly stable, people can predict, but it's been so unpredictable over the last 60 to 90 days, and it's not all that good right now. But let's hope that things steady out and we hear some encouraging words from the South, and that we're all going to work together. And I think.
Where did you hear that from?
Well, that's just me, Brian.
Oh, okay.
I'm just saying.
You're in the North. You can't, like, who's the South person you're talking to? This is what I don't know.
I was being encouraging before you came on, Brian. I was being very encouraging.
Right. Maybe that was it.
Despite having no influence whatsoever. I was just trying to be a nice person from South.
No, I mean, I think we've seen, like, we saw, like, it was, I think, generally speaking, politics aside, and how you feel, like, it was good to see, like, at least Danielle from Alberta be able to go and have a sit down with Mr. Trump, right? Whether that was productive, who knows? Whether it moved the needle, I don't know. But at least it was productive. And then I know Trudeau went down there. That's a whole different dynamic we won't get into with what's happening over there. But I heard that they delayed the tariffs, but then I heard as of yesterday, I think they said that February 1st was probably when they were going to put them into place.
Yep.
And then there's the whole dynamic of, like, we're not going to get into an economy discussion here, but the oil, and he's declared an emergency to increase oil production in the United States, which obviously impacts how much they may or may not import from Alberta. So, like, there is a lot of uncertainty. But I think that regardless of what happens there, I think we're still dealing with an economy that is going to be rough in 2025 for a lot of people. So let's assume for a second that maybe we're only flat to down marginally in the RV industry in 2025. how does that impact the industry?
If we, well, I think if we're flat or down only slightly, I think we'd all be ecstatic.
Okay. What do you realistically then? And I'm just asking this follow-up question because of the way you phrased it, right? What do you realistically think it's going to be in Canada? Is the only expertise you have, I think.
Yeah, I don't have any forecast right now. I don't know how Eleanor feels, but it's usually you got some kind of guidance. I personally don't, and everybody I talk to can't give me a definitive answer either. I don't know.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't think anybody knows, right? And it's just like in the campground industry, we study this for marketing. We do marketing for 400 or 500 campgrounds, and we also don't know because this is a unique situation that didn't even happen in 2008. This is a completely different recession, a completely different climate. So many things are different, right? But we're just kind of waiting to see, like, what is, and we're going to know pretty quickly here in February and March what's going to happen. Does the booking window change? What are the number of people that are going to reserve? How has this been impacted? Obviously, like, what does Trump do or not do that may or may not impact the economy in a positive or negative way? There's lots of unknowns. But I think generally speaking, regardless of politics, there appears to be a situation where the economy, generally speaking, overall in both countries, is going to struggle in 2025. Like, is there anybody on the show that thinks that it's going to go like turn around instantly in a couple months?
I can't speak for the U.S. economy, but I would tend to think that it probably going to maybe improve up here. We've got a pending election. That's those years are always uncertain. We're going through the leadership issue politically, and all those things are like I say, add to the uncertainty.
But it's expense too, right? It's food is up so much, and all the costs, and so that's impacting people's decision to buy big ticket items, isn't it? All over, washers, dryers, RVs.
Yeah, for sure. But people, still, the RV industry has always, got through, and people,
and they will again.
Yes, I guess my point is that people need to, no matter how the economy is, people still need to get outdoors and get away from it all.
Yeah.
And that's where both of our industries come into play, and there's always going to be a demand for that.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Like, I know that the tone of this has been negative for the last few minutes. I don't intend it to be. Like, again, I think our industry is going to be fine, but I also think, and Greg and I have talked about this, we'll talk about it more on another episode, perhaps, or different format. But like, I think there's a danger here from a campground owner side specifically, because that's the side I play in, right? And maybe that exists with RV dealers too. I think there's a danger in putting, and I'm not saying anybody's doing this, to be clear, but putting too much positive spin or wording into something that perhaps misleads people who don't pay attention as much as we do into thinking they're going to have a better year than they otherwise might. Does that make sense? Not pointing fingers at anybody, not saying anybody specifically is doing this, not blaming RV industry, campground industry, whatever else. But generally speaking, I think that's what I've seen recently from some different stakeholders. And like, we can talk about, we're talking about RV, we're on a show here, right? Like, shipments doesn't impact sales. It does impact the RV industry. It's important for manufacturers. It's a great statistic to have, right? Nobody's knocking it. But I think there's a danger from a campground owner perspective that doesn't understand what that means sometimes, which is not the RV industry's fault, to be clear. It's a campground owner expectation, whatever problem, that maybe these numbers that are frequently touted, that shipments are up, means that more buyers are going to buy, and that shipments perhaps are up because people are pulling things off the lots. And they're still buying. We've seen anecdotal evidence at the shows, right? But they're not buying in the same numbers. And so I'm just kind of worried here that some campground owners and glamping people are going to go into the 2025 with, as we've talked about for this whole show, expectations that perhaps don't match what they should, positive or negative?
I have something to add to that, Brian, that I'd like to share because, I think that with that knowledge on my opinion around that is that there's certain things that I think will be overall affected more than others in the outdoor hospitality. Like, for example, like RV camping experience, like Shane was saying before, like people are always going to revert to outdoor and want to spend time outdoor. But I think that where a certain type of resorts or type of experiences are positioned is where we'll see the needle go up or down and how that's being affected in the market. So for example, like if I was going to be purchasing an RV that's maybe $100,000, I think you'll see that type of manufacturer or product or industry maybe be way more affected, and you'll see a decline in those type of RV experiences versus like, maybe like a $20,000 type of RV. I think there's certain things that will strive and certain that won't in this type of possible economic situation. And it's the same thing in glamping that we're already seeing the needle being moved. So for example, there are glamping resorts that are, charging, $400 a night. And yes, they do have a nice experience, but I think when people go out glamping, they'll make a decision. Do I really need to spend $400 to still have the experience I can get if I go somewhere and spend $200? And I think this is where the hospitality industry, in my opinion, as outdoor would stay strong, but certain things will be stronger than they were and certain things just won't. I think it'll kind of level out depending on the type of product, the type of experience, the type of glamping. I still think that people will revert to these type of experiences before going to like resorts or hotels or things like that, unless it's a need, depending on price point. I think people are reverting more to outdoor RV, camping, glamping, but also where the needle will be moved, and those ones that will have the hit a lot more will depend on the caliber of price point and experiences that they have to offer in that industry as well.
So how do we tell that story, Shane and Eleonore, because I know it exists. I know what she just said is true. It must be. And so like we talked about in 2024, there are people buying a lot of the smaller trailers versus the big ones. We've had this conversation on the show before, right? Not that nobody's buying big ones, but like I think there's been a fundamental shift in some of the manufacturers and the models that people make and things that are selling. How do we tell that story? Because that's an interesting story. And maybe you're already telling it, and maybe just the campground side that I pay attention to doesn't hear it as much. But because there are for sure positives, just like she said, right?
Well, I think the industry does a good job at telling. Go RVing does a great job, and
But it's consumer, right? So like I'm just talking about like for campground owners, I guess.
I'm not sure.
I mean, I don't know that there's an answer. I get because you're right. Go RVing does an excellent job, but they are mostly consumer facing. And so that I think is covered. They do, again, in Canada and the US, I think they both do a great job with their marketing and their reach and bringing new people in and their campaigns that they have and all that stuff. But I mean like the type of rigs that are selling well, the type of manufacturers or the individual manufacturers that are doing really well because they have either a different product, just like we were talking about, coming full circle to experiences, right? Experiences at campgrounds and glamping and all that stuff. Is there a way, or should there be a way, or is Brian just dumb and should shut up? That's maybe all of the above. That like we can tell the stories of what is actually really being successful and that is a positive driver for the industry, because I think not only does that help the RV industry, and maybe you're sharing all this stuff internally, you probably are, but I think maybe it tells a story to a campground owner of like, maybe I'm building or renovating my park or adding glamping or not adding glamping. What do I focus on? Do I focus on smaller sites that are more intimate, or what is my consumer going to show up driving?
Well, I think it goes back to what Eleanor was saying before about us going to everybody's meeting. And, we see each other 10 times a year at least and talk a lot more frequently. And lately we've been, telling them about, certain units are getting longer and what the trends are. We communicate those things as best we can, to, all the campgrounds associations so they can, move that down. I think things do change. You're right that the trend may be towards a smaller unit, but it doesn't mean that a campground owner should all of a sudden build smaller sites.
No.
They these are trends. They go up and down. They change all the time, and if you can fit a smaller unit on a big site, you can't fit a big unit on a small site. So, I think they're more, I guess, listening harder when we say that the length of the units are increasing, which there is some truth to that.
Yeah, and I would say working with, the different ourselves internally, we have more information, but working, as a campground operator, at least in Canada, being part of your provincial association, which then in turn gets information from CCRVA, which is the national. I mean, we share a lot of that data with them. When I look at our RV stats for 2024, we have them to the end of November. The only segment that actually showed growth was fifth wheels. So, you're talking about, units, right? The fifth wheels, I mean, they're more expensive, they're longer, they're bigger, they can go up to 48 feet. So, for us to share that with CCRVA and then in turn CCRVA distributing that, through their provincial associations, that's where I think the campground operators need to look to try to gain some insights and participate in some of the education that's available to them through their provincial associations.
Which I agree with completely. Associations are absolutely critical. I think my other question is maybe a reflection on myself too. Is this partly my fault with Modern Campground? Like, could we do a better job of communicating with the RV industry specific to Canada? We're talking to you guys, right? But obviously the US too, to tell more of those stories that campground owners would find useful.
Wow.
Like, I'm basically asking you if I suck, and you can say that. Yeah.
Well, no, and you're all media is important in this to help with the communication, including, you, Brian, for sure.
Yeah, but I mean, we need to can we be more proactive? Is what I'm asking to the Canadian RV industry, to the two people who are sitting here, to help better tell stories that are relevant to campground owners, because as we're all on the show together and we all see campgrounds related to glamping is related to RV industry, is outdoor hospitality, is everything, right? Is there a larger role that is on us as a media company to provide better value to who we're talking about in this specific instance, campground owners? And if there is, I want to make it happen because it only benefits all of us, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't, I'd have to have a look at what you're currently providing and to see if we can identify any areas where we can supplement that with additional, resources and knowledge that we produce that might be helpful for the campground operators.
Okay, let's think about that then. I don't want to add work to your plate. We both know you do 2 billion things a day, Eleanor. So I'm willing to do the work, right? Maybe there's story ideas or suggestions or things like that, but yeah, I'd love to tell more of those stories because and Greg, you tell me if I'm wrong, because we're both in the campground industry side, and I'm obviously an American who immigrated to Canada, but we read Modern Campground, we read Woodall's. I don't read RV Business because I'm just not as involved in the RV industry, and so I'm sure there's much more of these stories there. But from a campground owner side, those are the two basic news resources besides the Facebook groups, right?
Yep.
So I feel like the only news we get from the RV industry is that shipments are up every month. And then the rest of the stories are about campgrounds, which, to be clear, is not the RV industry's fault. That's a coverage issue because there's very clearly more things going on in the RV industry than the fact that shipments are up or down or whatever they're doing, right?
Yeah.
So that's what I'm trying to say. Like, I think is on us to change. Is what
I think that's fair. I mean, I also think you guys and Woodall's, I think you guys do a great job of covering the industry, putting out relevant data. But you lead the horse to water. It is sort of incumbent on the owners, on the operators to read that, to pull out what's good for them, to take it on in a way that is beneficial to them, whether it be good news or bad news. There has to be some ownership on the side of owners.
The reader.
Yeah. I mean, because
I think producing the content, like, again, I don't even read my own daily newsletter because I don't have time. Sorry, Akari.
So that's why it's so bad.
But like, but is it like? Am I wrong?
No, it's not. It's not.
Like, I feel like the only thing we see pushed from not pushed because that's the wrong word, covered on a repetitive, regular basis in Woodall's and Modern Campground is RV shipments.
When it comes to the industry itself,
when it comes to the industry itself, yeah. Obviously, we cover manufacturers and new models and things like that, right?
Yeah.
And news about those people that are one time.
Yeah.
So that's what I think we can do a better job of, because, like, again, we sit here and we're talking about perception, and I'm pointing the finger right back at myself because my perception is that the only thing the RV industry pushes is that the good news that shipments are up, and there's so much other good news besides that, right, Eleanor and Shane? That my perception is that we just don't see it outside of the circles of the RV industry that communicate and talk well together. So I'm pretty sure my perception is wrong, right?
Yeah, I would disagree, and I don't think that's the only thing that we're sending out.
No, I'm saying I'm wrong. I'm saying,
I think there's releases on new features and neat new models and how the industry's doing as a whole and economic impact and all that. I think there's more than just a monthly reports. I
agree with you. I'm just saying that the campground side of the news tends to only, it appears to me, cover the shipments. And so, again, I'm with you. I 100% agree with everything you just said. I'm asking, and you don't have to give me an answer right now, but generally speaking, this is the theme of my question, is how do I help change that narrative so that we're amplifying more of the positive messages that come out of the RV industry? Because they're there, right? Just like Angele said, not everybody's going to have a positive story, right? And again, we talked about 2025, but in 2025, there are going to be nuggets of amazing manufacturers with amazing stories and great employees and wonderful customer service and improved maintenance and better service wait times and all the things, right? So many things to talk about from a positive aspect. How do we do a better job of sharing that?
Well, it just seems that, whoever's doing the research on your side needs to tap into other sources than just the RVIA shipments.
Absolutely. I'm blaming myself. We're on the same page here, right?
Yeah. So,
but that's what I need. Because I'm not in the RV industry, I need somebody in the RV industry to tell me how to do it better. What happened to my camera? It's like all orangey now.
Oh, so the Trump thing. Yeah, you didn't hear about that. So they signed an executive order to make y'all look orange, just like him. Every time you get on the camera. I'm sorry.
I actually kind of like it.
Yeah, that's going to be terrible. That's going to be terrible. You know what, Brian? Can I steer us a different direction? Can I ask a question?
Yes.
You don't care? So I'm curious. So Shane said earlier, if they end up flat or maybe up a little bit, he'd feel like that's an okay thing for this year, given all the chaos, the uncertainty, right, between elections and tariffs and orange camera feeds. I'm curious to see, like, Angele, what do you see for glamping for like flip side of the coin? So if that's what Shane is hopeful for on the RV side, what are you hopeful for what are you looking forward to as far as occupancy and similar, looking at, you don't look at RV sales because you don't have to have an RV to stay at your place. So maybe are you looking for a big bump up this year if RV sales are flat? What are you sort of forecasting for this year?
Yeah, that's a good question, and it's kind of one of those things where it was almost scary to see what was going to happen this winter. I know for us, like in where we're located, the province of New Brunswick has over 40 glamping resort that just popped out in the last 2 years.
Wow.
So competition is on an all-time high, and the economy is not, showing as strong. So there's only so much, potential or opportunity, for the glamping operators to really like strive in this time, and especially even in the winter season here. And so for us right now, what we're seeing, like, already happening, and because of how we also came about our resort specifically, is we came to be an affordable high-end luxury glamping experience. So because we position ourselves in that segment, we're still staying strong in terms of bookings, like we were not expecting to be as full as we are. So, right now for us, our weekends are full already till end of April, and our weekdays are getting full by the day. It's more of a last minute thing that it used to be 6 months before we would be sold out, but now it's like 2 weeks before we're starting to fill out. But what we're seeing is there's a lot of glamping resort we just saw coming for sale, and some that are actually decided to close out for the winter. So we're seeing the impact, but the category they're playing in is more in a high-end luxury. It's more expensive, caliber. So I think a lot of people are being conscious financially, with all the costs going up and everything. Those ones are being impacted a lot more than we would be impacted, but we've definitely been impacted more than usual. Usually for us, we'd be 100% capacity all the time. Yep. And now we're probably at 80% capacity. So we've seen the shift even in where we are positioned, so for us, we're just trying to focus on the experience and the customer service. And, we're really pushing that hard to make sure that everybody has a good experience. And even to jump a little bit on that, because I know earlier we were getting a conversation, people complain and there's comments, and how do you keep those customers happy? Sometimes you just can't, but for us, what's really like helping us keep that up in terms of even getting to bring a lot of people in and keep the customer service level up is when people make bookings with us, we'll ask them question. And a lot of time people, when they go glamping or they go away, is because they're celebrating birthdays, anniversaries, all these things. So we ask them question and we take notes of everything. So when the guests come back, we welcome them and say happy birthday, and they're like, oh my God, how did you remember my birthday? Like just little details. Absolutely. But little details that really bring that up for us and keep people coming back and keep us full in the time that we were not expecting maybe to be as full as we are. So we're really like pushing the bar to keep that up so that people will keep coming, in these situations.
Yeah. So you built essentially affordability into the very core of your business, right? You're luxury but affordable. And so I wonder then, flipping the coin back to Eleonore or Shane, are you seeing manufacturers doing the same thing, where they're trying to build more affordability into the new units so that because of the economic uncertainty, to try to drive more sales, whether it be smaller units or the fifth wheels? Do you see them trying to build in affordability at their core, like Angele is doing, in order to sustain or grow their sales?
I think the demand starts with a consumer who goes to the dealer and says, you got more of these, and then the dealer orders those from the manufacturer. I think it's, there's one huge dealer group in the U.S. who are just doing that, and they drive a pretty considerable influence on what the manufacturer builds.
Okay, so you're not necessarily seeing the builders up there saying, look, we need to build affordability, and we've got to make that part of our core message. Let's this line is going to be built or billed or advertised or marketed as the affordable line that we put out. Nothing really like that, or is there anyone out there doing that? Just curious.
No, I mean, in terms of our marketing to consumers, affordability is one of the key messages that we are focused on. It's been very important, and again, with Gore being Canada has been one of their key strategies for this year. But when we talk to the manufacturers, it's exactly what Shane said. It's the consumers what dictates what product ends up really in the industry. It's consumer driven. They'll go and ask for product. How units become longer, bigger. I mean, it's because consumers are demanding more slide outs, more more space. But at the same time, towables, lightweight. That was because consumers were dictating that trend. Affordable units, yes, will be one of them, but definitely not solely what they're focusing on at the moment.
And it's so much harder from an RV industry perspective. It must be from an RV industry perspective to focus on affordability versus a glamping resort or campground. Not that it's easy for a glamping resort or campground, right?
No, but considerably easier. Yeah, you're right. Absolutely.
Parts are much more expensive today than they were a few years ago, right? So even if you wanted to focus on that affordability, where do you do it?
Yeah. Yeah, it would take not just a rebrand. It would take almost like outfitting your entire line to build a new affordable. We're coming out with a new affordable line or a new affordable model and market it that way. It would be very different than being able to do it, day by day by clicking on your rates and moving them up or down. I think it's also interesting what you said, Brian, that ties back into your work with Scott, that booking window has shortened considerably. Yeah, I don't know. I'm sorry I hijacked your show. It's 7 minutes over now. So
No, it's fine. Again, if somebody needs to drop up, but we're going to wrap up here in a second anyway. So I think that, I don't know, just lean into the expensiveness, Eleanor. Just make it more expensive and give them an experience that they want. Like, for example, Shane greeting everybody inside the RV when they open it for the first time. They already bought it, right? And Shane is in there with a custom sign that says, "Hey, Cheryl, welcome home." Everybody would pay at least 10 grand more to see Shane, I think.
Indeed.
I'm sure.
10 grand US, to be clear.
I'm pretty sure they're going to
way more.
Pay 10,000 more for me not to be there, Brian.
Oh, there's the value prop.
Not if you had the sign. The sign is what's going to make the difference. It's the experiential custom sign.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I didn't mean to get into such a perhaps lightly controversial discussion. Certainly wasn't trying to insult anybody or things like that. I just think sometimes we have to have these conversations among the industry and, be forthright and figure out people like me who are sucking and can do better, right? How we can be better and all hold each other accountable. So I appreciate you being willing to answer those questions. Hopefully you guys will show up next month again. I'll get emails after this, be like, "I'm sorry, Brian, your show's terrible. I can't come back." But thank you guys for being here. Eleanor, where can they learn more about RVDA of Canada?
They can go to our website, which is www.rvda.ca.
And Shane, CRVA?
Yep, www.crva.ca.
Angele, Creekside?
So you can find us at our website, www.creeksidernr.com, or any of the social media site on Facebook and Instagram as well.
And Greg with Camp Strategy?
Yeah, you can find us on LinkedIn. You can email me directly at greg@campstrategy.com or find us at our website, campstrategy.com.
All right. Well, thank you guys for joining us for another episode of MC Fireside Chats. It's over now, and the cool intro is coming back. So y'all waited and listened to me for an hour just so you could get to this part. So don't leave now. But thank you for joining us for another episode of MC Fireside Chats. Really appreciate all of you being on the show and dealing with me. And we'll see you next week for another episode. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Brian. It was great.
See everybody.